It's just that I make robots, and I thought that was really relevant to this essay, but I don't have any like footage of my robots working because it always clutters up my computer, and then I only keep the footage of them destroying themselves or falling over because I find it funny.
There are small things that I found strange coming into Horizon Zero Dawn that kept putting me off liking it. The facial animations are strange and uncanny. The child you play as for the first 10 minutes is crazy ugly. The dialogue can be an acquired taste. Several times in the first act it's repeated that Aloy and Rust are not just outcasts, but
she's an outcast, to be shunned.
Horizon Zero Dawn did one thing wrong though, above all else, that I just can't forgive it for. There's no Adam Driver creator at all. You just have to play as this lady, Aloy.
No Adam Driver creator in an open world game? An open world game with a hipster medieval fantasy aesthetic? Hipster medieval fantasy is like my boy's #1 look. You gotta be kidding me!
Section 1. Introduction.
The obvious flaw to open world game design is that the game presents you with an impossible amount of choice and possibility, and you're overwhelmed just sitting there like, but I'm just a baby.
Horizon Zero Dawn makes a bold choice by not giving the player character choice and locking it into one story, and although I'll never forgive the game for excluding my precious boy, it definitely solves that issue. Similarly in Fallout New Vegas, even though you can design your character, you are necessarily Curio 6, and you play their story. Playing necessarily as Aloy is a success here in Horizon Zero Dawn the way Curio 6 is a success for Fallout New Vegas. Horizon Zero Dawn looks at a world 1,000 years after the end of our own, where machine life forms walk the earth and highly advanced technology is akin to a sort of magic in the eyes of the humans of the new civilizations. In this subsistence society, different cultures have arisen. Aloy lives in the Nora tribe, who have a deeply religious society built around an animist faith.
Aloy is an outcast because she has no mother, so she's raised by Rost, who at some point chose to break Nora law and become an outcast himself. Aloy has a special doohickey called a Focus that's essentially a holographic heads-up display that she found in the Metal World, ruins of the old world that the Nora are explicitly forbidden from exploring.
Via a coming-of-age ritual called the Proving, Aloy can become a brave of the tribe and end her isolation, and if she is the single victor of the Proving, she can make a special request of the Elders, which of course for her would be knowledge about her mother. An attack by an unknown enemy leaves many Nora dead and sets Aloy on her way to seek revenge, and ultimately find answers about where she came from. But a sickness that has been corrupting machines provides an extra mystery, while also showing Aloy a way to override and tame the mechanical beasts.
As you progress into Horizon Zero Dawn, you might find yourself absolutely falling in love with it. There are lots of great mechanics and beautiful settings, and straightforwardly charming moments.
For example, when Aloy first overrides and commandeers a machine to ride, she says,
"This beats walking."
And at first your reaction might be, what a weird thing to say, but then you realize that in this world no one has ever done what she just did before, and her people don't seem to use horses, which means that quite possibly nobody she has ever met, ever, has traveled faster than their own legs could carry them. And suddenly it's actually pretty funny that the thing she said when getting on a robotic horse for the first time was as nonchalant as, whoa, this beats walking.
Horizon Zero Dawn kind of doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at being a medieval fantasy game or a robot game. It's a medieval fantasy robot game. Horizon Zero Dawn doesn't stop at having one Z in its name, scientifically the coolest letter. It has two. It doesn't stop at telling an interesting story, it conceives of an interesting story, and then imagines the consequences to that, and then creates a society radically different to our own, and then tells a story in that society 1,000 years in the future after the original interesting things happened. The scale of the storytelling is practically Tolkien-esque.
Something really clever about the open world design versus the planned interaction of the game is the way that it subtly pushes you back out into the wilderness, without making you feel excluded. The game encourages you back away from player interactions towards playing with the machines, taming the machines, uncovering the mysteries of where they come from and the forgotten world. Even though the characters you meet are delightful and honestly, in a lot of cases, as well written as the NPCs of Fallout New Vegas, a lot of your conversation with them involves them saying, "Whoa, you're the cool machine lady, right?" On top of establishing an interesting rapport whereby everyone Aloy meets is pretty much in awe of her, This just tells you again and again what you should really be doing has nothing to do with the people. Aloy's place is with the machines. It doesn't push you away from the humans, it doesn't keep you apart, it just subtly tugs you to follow the call of the wild. And that's pretty interesting to me, because I'd probably describe Horizon Zero Dawn as like a Zelda game, but with machines. But you know what came out a month after it? Zelda Breath of the Wild. A Zelda game, but with machines. There are even very similar mechanics, like populating the map by climbing a big tall thing and overriding it with your Techno-Gadget. There's also something delightful about the eerily empty open world of Horizon Zero Dawn that reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus. And especially when the best parts of the game tend to be navigating old ruins and climbing enormous creatures. But in Zelda you climb big stone machine creatures too. And...
Wait, are these all just the same game?
honestly, something I found off-putting in the first place was how clearly similar to other games Horizon Zero Dawn was, because it looked like it might not have anything new to say. So I want to look a little today at how video games influence one another, and on a larger scale, how everything influences everything.
I've seen people get mad at the suggestion that Dark Souls is inspired in some way by Zelda, because Zelda's a game for children and Dark Souls isn't a game for children. But it's okay, lots of things are inspired by things in a different age bracket. Like, The Lion King is very obviously a retelling of Hamlet, and The Revenant is a transparent ripoff of Finding Nemo.
You might be familiar with the idea of something being canon in a franchise or piece of media, meaning it officially happened. But I'd like to talk about the concept of a canon. Here's a pause for you to make a joke about a big gun. Okay, a canon in media takes after the canon of the Catholic Church. Canonizing a dead person means deciding that they were a saint all along. A canon in media is a collection of works that are considered influential and important.
The obvious problem with saying, these are the most important works is... What? No, they aren't. What?
I do, however, think that a canon is developed even without an official council like the Catholic Church has to decide who gets to be saints. I think that a canon is formed colloquially by people talking about a piece of media they find to be good, important, moving, powerful. Just as all matter in the universe acts upon all other matter in the universe through gravity, every work influences every other work. Obviously though, planets have more pull than single particles. In Tradition and the Individual Talent, Tyrannosaurus Snape Elliott wrote,
"No poet, no artist of any art, has the complete meaning alone. Their significance, their appreciation, is the appreciation of their relation to the dead poets and artists. You cannot value them alone. You must set them, for contrast and comparison, among the dead."
We might assume there is no canon in video games, but we also might eat things we find on the floor on a busy street, and that wouldn't necessarily be a good idea. Something that might obscure the canon of video games is what wanky thought mind people would like to call intertextuality, but we might call the endless goddamn circle jerk of blatant plagiarism.
When Twoops Boop Elliott writes about the dead poets and artists, he doesn't necessarily mean dead, but I don't think he was anticipating people making art the way games are made, alongside a multitude of living contemporaries constantly influencing and changing the medium.
The fact that games are made by capitalist corporations accountable to profit means that an interesting thing happens to the canon of games as a medium. An original seminal work can be published and be very important and influential and can influence many works, and some of those works themselves can go on to be important and influential and influence later games in the same series as the original work.
Taking an example from earlier, look at how Legend of Zelda was the obvious inspiration for the world and setting of Shadow of the Colossus, and how the more recent Zelda games, such as Breath of the Wild, include elements that are, it's fair to say, reminiscent of Shadow of the Colossus, such as the big empty open world, or climbing on the big enemies and finding the weak spot to defeat them, or the fucking useless horse mechanics. For that matter, Breath of the Wild and Horizon Zero Dawn have some spookily similar elements. There's the use of advanced technology as a quasi-magic. Like I said before, the climbing to the top of a big thing and scanning the area to fill in the map. There's the garbage fucking horse mechanic. Not saying that Horizon Zero Dawn was an influence on Breath of the Wild. Also, as I said before, it only came out a month earlier. I'm just saying that things which are in the collective consciousness fed into both of them. I guess what I'm trying to say is, plagiarism is good actually.
To analyze that properly, you'd really need to make a bunch of videos, a series, maybe on a popular video platform online. You could call it like patterns versus computer games, or okay, fine. I was gonna do a joke here about being the next Anita Sarkeesian and stuff, but she came out with a new series while I was writing this. It's pretty redundant now. Typical Anita ruining everyone's fun.
Forgive me. It was only a joke for the video. Please, Dark Mother, show me the SJW way, and I will finish what you started.
Section 2. Tropes. Huh. Yeah. What are they good for?
In his video about a court case, Big Joel talked Big Joel talked about the metaphysics of objects. That is to say, I'm just going to keep going. That is to say, whether objects inherently have meaning or whether we give them meaning from their context. Whether we can, let's say, aggressively read meaning into things. That's right, I'm back on my bullshit!
So, do objects have inherent meaning, or are they given meaning by us? I think if you've ever seen my videos before, you know that I think we give objects meaning. Even objects, like in Big Joel's video, that have explicit text on them that seemingly dictate one. The original meaning of the word meme comes from mimetic theory, describing the way that ideas can act exactly like living organisms, in the way they spread and propagate. When a person communicates an idea to another person, the meme of that idea gets bigger. When an idea is totally lost, the meme dies. As for tropes.
Hello, I am LCC_218, and tropes, as we all know, are an incredibly useful form of narrative shorthand. A deliberately placed incidence of a well-known trope can very efficiently establish a particular set of expectations in the audience, which can then be either satisfied or subverted to powerful effect. It can be easy to assume that the word trope specifically connotes something which plays into harmful stereotypes, because such instances tend to receive the bulk of vocal criticism with good reason. But that does not mean that a trope must be rooted in a harmful stereotype in order to be a trope. For example, the trope of the old, bearded man as wise and magical mentor is entirely harmless because it does not reinforce a harmful society-wide belief that old, cis, white men are wise in all things and should be placed in leadership positions and listened to even against one's better judgment. That simply is not a belief that anyone in the whole of human history has ever been really, truly harmed by. It has never happened. It will never happen. No? Well, then it must be that they're all refusing to grow beards anymore.
When it comes to memes, there's no certainty in what will catch on and thrive and spread. Sometimes totally accidental or unsolicited things become utterly iconic, but it's also far from impossible for things designed intentionally to be appealing or cool or just catchy to grow and flourish. Especially in games where you hear the same little noises and see the same icons over and over, it can be easy for little things to take on a much bigger importance.
You must construct additional pylons. Oh, banana!
That's why, and you're gonna have to put on your tinfoil hats and bear with me here, the triangle button is extremely significant in Horizon Zero Dawn. Honestly, I know this sounds extremely silly, but just listen.
The buttons on the PlayStation controller are 4 basic symbols in order to have 4 buttons that aren't numbered or otherwise ordered, but symbols can't not remind us of things. We automatically assign meaning as human beings, or even by virtue of the way that games happen to utilize those buttons most often, we get used to them meaning something. For example, when Machine Games set out to design Wolfenstein as the most immersive combat experience possible, they eliminated down inventory. They designed levels and ammo and weapons all with immersive combat in mind, but they also made everything revolve around the square button. The square button is, and this is just my take based on no data, so feel free to leave your angry comment now, the aggression button. Square is most commonly used in FPS games for either melee combat or reloading weapons, or both. In Wolfenstein, however, square is character interactions, object pickups, opening doors, accessing plans, and yes, also melee combat and reloading weapons. It isn't necessarily meaningful to Wolfenstein that they use the square button, it just reflects the ongoing use of it for combat in games, and makes that pattern more apparent. In Horizon Zero Dawn, however, there are triangles absolutely everywhere. There are triangles in the designs of the creatures, of the devices, of the world itself. The cauldrons that you explore, the hubs of machine technology that create new machines, that you explore in order to unlock the ability to override more of the machines, are just jam-packed with triangles. There are triangles absolutely dang everywhere in there. I can't help but feel like in the cases of where it relates to the technology from the past, the triangles are meant to gently remind us of the pyramids. Aloy is looking at these bases that machines come out of, these ancient relics of a lost society, and through her eyes we don't know whether they were really put there by people, or some sort of alien force. The pyramids have long been a wonder of the ancient world because of the sheer enormity of their construction and the complexity of the architectural engineering involved, and that's led some people who have no confidence in how insanely cool the ancient Egyptians were to believe they were actually built by aliens.
The Great Pyramid of Khufu is like 200 meters on a side, and the base is so flat it doesn't vary in height by more than a few inches. That's like... I don't know how to do that. The ancient Egyptians were just really cool, guys. With triangles being such a densely populated motif in the game, you can't really get away with playing it for hours and hours as you do, and not at some point think, I'm kind of interacting with everything through the triangle button. That's something.
As Aloy progresses into the world and uncovers more of the history of the world that came before, she meets Silence, an enigmatic figure who is researching the old world too. He's uncovering the history of their world, and that's what she wants to find out about, because, as it turns out, the mysteries of the sickness in the machines, the men who attacked her tribe, and who her mother really is, are all tied in together. The reason this unlikely pair become quick friends, I'd posit, is not just that they both love researching the past, but that their interest in the past gives them a common language. They're digging up the long-forgotten memes and tropes of the old world, the cultural debris of the end of human society. In Patricia Lockwood's article lecture performance discussing the collectivization of experience via the internet, The Communal Mind, she lays out a fantastic account of the wonderful and scary and totally weird experience that being very online is.
A conversation with a future grandchild. She lifts her eyes, as blue as willow ware. The tips of her braids twitch with innocence. So you were all calling each other bitch? And that was funny. And then you were all calling each other binch? And that was even funnier? How could you possibly explain it? Which words and in which order could you possibly utter that would make her understand? Yes, binge.
Rather than a direct commentary, her piece is more a stream of consciousness, only pausing explicitly to ask questions at particular moments. For example, did we help bring back fascism by liking fascist haircuts? And
what is binge?
She refers to herself in the third person throughout, except where she refers to herself as part of a whole. She calls herself she, or she says we, but never I or me. Humans are naturally social animals, so even without the internet, I think the way tropes and memes create this common cultural reference is inherently tied to the surrendering of the individual identity into the collective one. By sharing common references with others, by creating an in-group, we aren't creating a stronger sense of me, we're creating a stronger sense of us. Aloy discovers as she uncovers the story of the past that she is the clone of a woman called Dr. Elizabeth Sobek. Elizabeth was a brilliant scientist who worked with Ted Farrow, owner of a company manufacturing robots for war. As the robots rose up and quickly moved toward dooming the entire world, Elizabeth and Ted worked toward possible solutions.
The robots are repeatedly referred to as a plague through the whole game, which I guess makes them Pharaoh's plague. Nice.
A program was implemented to create a time capsule that would repopulate the Earth after the apocalypse so that an AI, Gaia, created by Elizabeth, could defeat the machines, reform the world using machine creatures so the new humans could live in it, and then start the repopulation program.
The only problem is that the people brought together to preserve humanity's existing culture by contributing to the education of the new humans are cruelly murdered by Ted. Which I guess is technically the mummy's curse?
Ted felt that human culture didn't deserve to be saved, that the history of civilization had only so far led to the impending demise they were facing anyway, so saw nothing good in it. After the restart, when things started to go wrong in the new world, when something disrupted Gaia's function and posed a threat to the survival of the new civilization, Gaia created a biological copy of Elizabeth, the only person she felt could possibly help.
And that clone was Albert Einstein. Aloy. It was Aloy.
So Aloy is an outsider not just because she's the cool lady with the machines, not just because she's an outcast, but because she's actually one with the old world and the machines. She is there deliberately to uncover these mysteries and piece together the truth from the fragments left behind. She is the bridge between the new world and the old one. Everyone is her us, and nobody is her them. Even the threat in the story comes from a subsystem of Gaia gone rogue. The enemy is not an outsider, but a clearly related part of their world.
This kind of ability to move from place to place and build genuine and interesting relationships with the NPCs each time, and to have everything connected back to a very real-feeling world is a great foundation for a game. And I say that especially because that's the foundation for Fallout New Vegas, the only good Fallout game. So that's not fair. At least 76 made Country Roads popular again, and that song fucking slaps.
To the place I belong, West Virginia.
Section 3. I'm already eating from the garbage all of the time, and the garbage can is called Tropes.
Hello, I am 23618, and tropes, as we all know, are a gargantuan pile of racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, fatphobic, ableist garbage. Because tropes are simply narrative elements repeated so often as to become recognizable, and as such are reflections of our culture's most pervasive beliefs, which are of course a gargantuan pile of racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, fatphobic, ableist garbage. Because we are racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, fatphobic, ableist garbage. All of us, even the holograms, and our stories cannot escape our garbage until we do.
The thing that makes tropes useful and good, marking out a common language for people, shaping a community, a society, a culture, is the same thing that makes them hard to break free from and therefore can make them so bad. Exactly what's good about quickly defining cultural common language and touchstones is also what's bad about it. It's tropes, memes, living and evolving ideas that inform how we think of people who we have very little information about. There are going to be some people who think that every English YouTuber they watch lives in a country populated by people who talk like,
"Oh, crumpets, it's bloody cold outside. God save the Queen and whatnot. Anyway, I must be off. The Arsenal's playing today. Tally-ho!"
There are cultural ideas that come up for people who live in the West when they think of different perceived racial groups.
When you, as someone living in the West, think of, say, a black man, certain stereotypes might come to mind. For example, nearly or totally asexual, docile, obsessed with gambling. What? Okay, you probably see what I did there, right? I took a little bet on what negative attributes you would be thinking of, and then I said different ones. Well, it's not actually just that. Those are all stereotypes that 1900s America put on black men. I wanted you to think about these totally non-sequitur racist tropes, because I think there's a tendency for people to think about racist tropes they're familiar with and say, yeah, I know that's a racist trope, but...
That just now was confusing because racism is confusing. that just now made no sense because racism makes no sense. What I want to communicate is that people in the 1900s believed this weird racist moon logic exactly the same way people now believe other weird racist moon logic. Tropes and memes can also be hijacked and used in insidious ways by people who understand how the attention economy works. In recent years, fascists, white supremacists have adopted seemingly mundane things such as the OK hand gesture, Pepe the Frog from Matt Fury's Comic Boys Club. Their adoption of these mundane things is a simple but frustratingly effective way of creating dog whistles, things that have a certain meaning only to people who are tuned into the possibility of noticing it.
Adopting a pre-existing mundane reference for your Nazi purposes means that you get a lot of people furiously insisting, no, the frog means racism, it's not a racist frog. Well, sometimes it is a racist frog, but it's like, no, when people share the frog, it's like, it's a racist thing, and you, if you're a Nazi, get to smugly retreat to the defense that it's just memes. And you'll even rope some innocent bystanders who aren't actually Nazis into defending your memes too. Some meme enthusiasts. Some real meme connoisseurs.
And then, in an absolute masterstroke, you can claim subscribing to a popular YouTuber as a dog whistle. You make the instruction to subscribe to this person a secret code that you know is for Nazis, and the left know is for Nazis, but his whole pre-existing fan base doesn't know, and whenever anyone brings it up, they think that the YouTuber they're a fan of is being accused of being a racist, and will defend them.
So when it's the most popular YouTuber in the world, you can imagine this gets pretty tiring, because every time we want to talk about how subscribe to PewDiePie is a racist dog whistle, yep.
I didn't really want to have to talk about the OK symbol or subscribe to PewDiePie, because although these methods of subverting existing memes for fascist signaling are interesting, and a fascinating case study of how the attention economy works, how the society of the spectacle can be manipulated, it just felt like an inconsequential thing that we all argue about online sometimes. I say, hey, that's the racist frog, and they say, no, that frog's just a meme.
I really didn't want to have to talk about this, but then a meme enthusiast, a real meme connoisseur, a Nazi scumbag shithead piece of trash, went to 2 mosques in New Zealand, where I was born, and murdered 50 people. An Australian fascist, seen in his court photos doing the OK hand symbol, told viewers on his live stream to subscribe to PewDiePie before shutting it off and doing the largest massacre in New Zealand in almost 250 years. And now it doesn't matter if the OK hand symbol is an ironic fascist symbol or a genuine one, because a genuine mass murderer with a genuine fascist ideology uses it as one.
And yet, somehow people are still defending these things, calling them just memes. And it's because of that mechanism by which tropes and memes, a shared common cultural language, become the boundaries of us. People see these memes and tropes as a part of their identity because their existence validates their sense of self, as part of the in-group.
As another example, a few years ago, a vocal minority of gamers conducted a campaign of harassment and attacks against a perceived threat from feminists. Feminism can be seen as a threat to the validation that you get from your in-group, from your validation gang, when the feminists come to take your games, question the tropes in media that can be harmful to people of all genders by perpetuating a negativity against femininity.
I still see these reactions now, even when the games themselves are trying to tear down harmful tropes. These Gamergate weirdos still see it as part of some agenda by fake gamers, people who don't really... They make the games! What are you talking about? For example, when Wolfenstein 2 came out, there was a narrative in it which really compassionately developed a character who was a black activist and feminist, Grace. Grace is great and a badass, but when you're first introduced to her, the game takes a moment to show that Blazkowicz, the protagonist and player insert, is actually put off by her rhetoric.
The game gives you a moment to go, meh, at the thing you don't like, if you don't like it, but then it shows Blazkowicz's friendship and respect for her developing, in the hopes that you'll at least reach a point about it. I think the game handles this masterfully in a way that's incredibly empathetic and gentle. And still there are some people who are going, nah! Or even have started going, nah! Louder and more. Nah! Nah!
This, I'd say, is a really good example of how we create an in-group that's real, and if we see someone moving to turn off the validation tap, we spin a narrative that they're fake, not a real part of our in-group and therefore de facto part of the out-group. This same thing can be the reason intersectionality can be so hard to achieve. The collaboration between leftists, feminists, anti-racists, queer advocates can involve every group telling the others the way in which it perpetuates things that are harmful, and that questioning feels to every one of those in-groups like an attack by the out-group. I've talked before about validation clashing with validity, how people view the things that validate them as part of their identity, and therefore see an attack on their validation as attack on them personally, and therefore equate it to attacks on other people's validity. The sense of self related to the identity and to validation feels just like the sense of self related to your actual right to exist and to validity.
So that's where we see validation and validity clash when we're trying to achieve intersectionality. When someone perceives someone saying, hey, that thing you like is kind of harmful, it makes me feel unsafe, as an attack on them personally.
Which brings us back around to Horizon Zero Dawn, which subverts tropes masterfully. It keeps showing you where you think it's going to go, and then suddenly changing course. It sets up the Proving, a coming-of-age ritual that you really think is going to be the start of a classic coming-of-age story. It introduces the shithead character who's mean to Aloy and just the worst generally. And I thought, seeing as we look like we're about to enter futuristic Bronze Age Hogwarts, that this character would be developed into someone we'd be at least asked to tolerate, if not like and respect. Then though, when the anonymous raiders attack the camp, they kill many of the Nora Braves, including him, and I'm so shocked, but so happy that they deliberately didn't do that thing that I thought they were gonna do. And I just get chills right through my whole entire bod. When Silence keeps helping out Aloy, it feels like he's going to betray her, or maybe not, and he's just gonna fill this mentor role that we're really familiar with. But then, when he's got the information he wants, he just sort of recognizes that it's her story, and she's gonna be fine, and he leaves. I just think that's really neat.
There's so much more to discover before the world ends.
And all this?
I leave it to you, of course. As it turned out, it was yours all along. I was merely trespassing.
My favourite way Horizon Zero Dawn subverts our expectations, though, is the underlying use of dramatic irony.
Section 4. On the Horizon. Dramatic irony, if you aren't familiar, is a plot element where we the audience know something the characters in the story do not know. It is irony arising from the knowledge we have that they are characters in a story. If Harry is in one room with a gun and hates Henry, and in the other room Henry is declaring loudly, "Gosh, I'd love to be alive," then we can see an irony because of the knowledge that Henry isn't privy to. The thing about dramatic irony is, it usually requires a payoff, which is bad news for Henry.
In Horizon Zero Dawn, there is a colossal dramatic irony in the fact that the game is set in the future, and Aloy is trying to discover things about the past. Because she's trying to discover things about the past, we feel like the fact that she lives in a matriarchal society, the fact that her people aren't grouped or separated by race, are things that she will discover are in conflict with the old world. We think, on some level, that she is going to be corrected when she finds out about the way the world used to be. But there is no payoff to this dramatic irony. She isn't corrected because the old way isn't correct. It's just something that used to make sense to some people who died a long time ago.
This game is deliberately packed with familiar elements. The things I thought at first were off-putting, how similar it was to familiar media, are actually what makes it kind of fucking genius. The names in the game aren't subtle at any point really. Alloy, is a meld of different societies and helps bring people together. Rust, is old and worn out. That shitty kid I mentioned earlier is just called Basta. I can only assume because he's a bastard. But there are elements that are chosen either by the game makers or by characters in the past in the game that have meaning that Aloy and others are oblivious to. Gaia the AI is named for the Greek goddess who is the embodiment of the living world, Mother Nature. Her subsystems are all named after other Greek gods like Apollo, Hades, or Hephaestus. The way that these references are scattered through the lore run parallel to the way that Aloy will occasionally discover items like ancient glowing bracelet and have no explanation, but you can see from the icon for the item that it's just a digital watch. There's a process by which the game takes things and removes their context and asks us to imagine them without any cultural significance at all. Elizabeth Sobek is named after Sobek, the Egyptian god of fertility, pharaonic power, and military strength, which is incredibly apt for what they've done with the character. She's the advisor to Pharaoh and then becomes the mother of the machines and the new humans. We spotted the naming from a mile out literally as soon as Elizabeth Sobek is mentioned.
Granted, it is a bit of a strange transition going from, she's called like that Egyptian crocodile, to, oh no, this woman isn't just called Sobek, she actually is the master of creation, the mother of all mankind, the god of fertility, the emblem of pharaonic power and military might. All will bow before...
I think you need to calm down.
Yep,
There's no way people will understand
No, I know.
the strength of your emotions.
Okay, I took it to a place... Yep. Granted, that is a bit of a strange transition, subtextually speaking, but there's something really charming about the on-the-noseness of Horizon Zero Dawn's little winks at mythology.
It feels very fitting that as you run around in this big empty world in the ruins of the old civilization, robbed of their meaning by a lack of context, you are presented with names, ideas, and stories that the game never comments on explicitly, because Aloy would never have a reason to understand the meaning behind any of it.
I keep comparing Horizon Zero Dawn to Fallout New Vegas, a game that I absolutely adore, a game that in many ways is my favorite game. Why is that?
Post-apocalyptic stories often contain a message about hope. On the one hand, there's this sadness, a mourning for what's been lost. Everyone suffered and they died, and it didn't get better in the end. But on the other hand, much more than that, usually there's this excitement for the idea of being able to start fresh. That's why I keep bringing these two games together, I guess, and it's not just because they're both post-apocalyptic stories. It's because they're both westerns. The western as a genre is defined by an era of change. The actual period of history in which all the cowboy adventures and gunfighter stories took place was really only a little over a decade, making this cultural idea we have of the Wild West exist on a knife edge between the world before and the world after. Plenty of post-apocalyptic fiction, as a result, is the natural successor to the western.
Vonnegut wrote at the start of Breakfast with Champions that he was trying to make my head as empty as it was the day I was born to this damaged planet 50 years ago, as he discarded some things he felt had no value and kept others. He was in the process of deciding which things he wanted to take with him into the future and which things he wanted to throw away. Horizon Zero Dawn, too, seems to say that the core of some stories, that fragments of our culture might be worth remembering, but also that some tropes are trash and we can throw them away to make room for better.
The Nora society is matriarchal, and the protagonist of the game is female. Subverting tropes and representing powerful women is something HZD has clearly decided has value. The game retells elements of stories we're familiar with, superficially flashing us with references to grasp at, if only to signal that we should be choosing what to take with us to the new world. As well as the Greek god names and the ancient Egypt nods, there are elements of other mythologies incorporated too. Elizabeth and Ted allowing the old world to be destroyed and then creating a new one is reminiscent of the biblical flood. The time capsule is like Noah's Ark. The cloning is Immaculate Conception, but flipped so that the female creator has a daughter without a man. The ultimate gender flip.
She's the mother, the daughter, and the Holy Ghost in the machine. It's a gender flip of the Holy Trinity, which is why the triangle button is so significant. I can tell this is going to be the take that ruins me. Hey Eric, what happened to your YouTube channel? Oh, I tried to say that the triangle button has subtext, now there are only 3 subscribers left.
I think this game is saying something pretty awesome, and I think it has to do with tropes and memes. The game is made up of used pieces, recycled from known elements, to say something new. Or rather to say that nothing is new, and we should put forwards and propagate the things we want to see succeed.
Even at the end of the world, you can be an optimist, because every moment is an opportunity for you to make the future a little better. And even with the past still with us, every moment is an opportunity for us to let some of the past die and learn from the parts we find meaningful, validating, and constructive. Man, if only there was a big budget movie with that message, I could write a really good video about that. So what does Horizon Zero Dawn have to say on the meta level about tropes and memetics and living in the cultural trash of an imagined, ruined, perfect past? It says, don't worry, because every second is the end of the world, and every second is the start of a new one. So each moment is an opportunity for us to create for ourselves the best future possible.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country road.
Hello everyone. I hope you liked that video. It's been in the works for a little while now, kind of before I even played Horizon Zero Dawn actually. I'd like to thank Han the Man and Bathymetrics for the wonderful music for this video, and Laura Crone, Peter Coffin and Elwyn Brooks for all giving me their best English accents. I'd also like to thank you, the viewer, for watching all the way to the end. I have a Patreon and a PayPal, and moreover, quite a bit of rent I have to pay every month. And if a tenth of my current subscribers became $1 patrons each, I'd actually be paying that rent, which is a crazy thought. Not a demand or anything, just an interesting thought. Anyway, see you next time everyone.
I hear her voice in the morning hours, she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. And driving down the road I get a feeling that I should have come home yesterday. Yesterday, country roads take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, take me home. Country roads, take me home. Country roads.
Ye and haw.